Welcome back, Carters. 2021 has come to a close and we have a total of 16 records set in the past 4 months to review. These records came from 3 players across 7 tracks, so without further ado, let's take a look. The first track we'll be looking at is Rainbow Road, specifically the shortcut category, where Dasher had 4 improvements on the 3-lap and a single record on the fast lap. Coming into September, the record set at 138.423 on the 3-lap and 31.157 on the flap, both set 4 years earlier. Before we analyze the runs in detail, there are a few tricks to be aware of in this run. Found in 2006, the strategy involves driving past this key checkpoint, turning around, and launching yourself off the stage in such a way that you pass through the next key checkpoint and respawn before the corkscrew. The shortcut was discovered using a mushroom, but a mini-turbo boost also works. To perform this shortcut optimally, you'll need to start turning around early, just barely triggering the next checkpoint region while also reorienting yourself for the cut. If all goes well, Lakitu will place you ahead on the track and you'll save about 1.5 seconds. The second shortcut is the loop skip. Discovered in 2014, this shortcut involves launching yourself from the opening spiral, past the road above you, and into the exit of the big loop. This one is much more precise than Pipe Glitch, but has a similar setup. The difficulty with this trick is how precise you need to be. The developers were quite aware that a skip like this would be possible, so much of the area is flagged as out of bounds. To succeed, you need to be as close as possible to the road above you, just barely passing beside it as you ascend. Even if you've managed to get this far, you can still fail from not having enough speed or having a bad angle. But if you've done everything correctly, you will glide safely into the loop and continue your run. But there's still more to it somehow. Taking a quick glance at the checkpoint map, there is a key checkpoint just past where players take off from. It is essential that you trigger this checkpoint before you turn back for the shortcut. However, this won't be an issue for the following situation. This shortcut can also be performed with just a mini turbo by driving a bit further down the road, turning around, and quickly charging a boost. The tricky part here is not hitting this booster, which will give you far too much speed and instantly end the run. No bueno. Okay. So with that all out of the way, let's take a look at some records, shall we? On my birthday, September 5th, Dasher cut 95 milliseconds off his record with a 138.328 run. The run had a slow lap 1, but lap 2 and lap 3 were pretty good. 2 days later, Dasher halved the distance to the sub with a 138.164. This run had a nice lap 1, a spectacular lap 2, subbing 33 seconds, but the run was closed by a less than ideal split on lap 3, losing 184 milliseconds to his previous record. This wouldn't do. The sub must be achieved. So 11 days later, Dasher did just that, crushing his previous time by 354 milliseconds with a 137.810. But just the sub wouldn't do. We can go lower. Dasher cut another 1/4 second and ended his improvements with a 137.561 run on October 17th. This run had a decent lap 1, a great lap 2, and a spectacular lap 3. Let's take a look. Dasher begins his run by hopping at the top of this slope instead of driving down. This is faster because he can keep a higher horizontal speed while falling. Thanks, Super! Coming up the spiral, Dasher turns himself around, crossing the key checkpoint, and then doubles back and gets a nice launch. Interesting to note, Dasher holds up on the D-pad to fall faster, allowing him to land in the loop sooner and spend more time at boosted speed. Coming up the slope, Dasher flawlessly turns around, allowing the back half of his cart to cross the key checkpoint before charging a quick RMT and hopping off stage. Once again, Dasher fast falls so that he can trigger the out of bounds as early as possible and get moving. When Lakitu drops you back on the stage, Dasher instantly gets a jolt of speed by pressing A before he lands. This is called a respawn boost or a Lakitu boost and is relatively easy to perform, but if you were to miss it, the run would essentially be over. In the corkscrew, Dasher rapidly hops up the slope and takes this specific line, which is faster. If you would like to know exactly why it's faster, we literally don't know. It just works. In the final turns of the lap, Dasher does some tricky delayed MTs. It is very easy to fall off, go wide, or get random bounces here, so the precise steering and drifting in this section is essential. Okay, so lap 2 now. Once again, the lap starts with Dasher getting a boost and jumping from this slope. Since he no longer has a shroom, Dasher needs to employ a different strategy. Driving past the Shroom spot, he doubles back and charges an LMT and hops just as he's on the edge of the road to perform a second loop skip. Dasher is an absolute legend on this track, and once again pulls off a very nice pipe glitch and stays clean into lap 3, entering the lap 149 milliseconds ahead of his previous time. He could just stay even with the time and cash in a nice world record, but this is Mario Kart DS PRB God and World Champion David Roldan we're talking about. We don't simply maintain a lead. Instead, he crushes it and drives the best lap 3 ever in a world record run, highlights of which included almost throwing it away by hitting this boost panel, a beautiful pipe glitch, and a clutch final MT to close the run. Looking at the fast lap, Dasher cut 41 milliseconds off his own record with a 31.116 run. On this attempt, Dasher uses the Rob standard cart, which is quite a bit faster than the Egg, but it isn't nearly as maneuverable. This attempt begins on lap 2 with a short setup before the lap, which differs from his former record. This saves time because you start further to the left of the track, thus driving less distance. Like the 3-lap, Dasher turns around at the key checkpoint and aligns himself for the loop skip. The setup is the exact same, albeit a tiny bit slower due to poorer steering. The main time save comes from the pipe glitch though. Since Dasher still has a mushroom remaining, he is able to use it right as DK turns around, instead of having to charge an MT. Once again, he fast falls to save time once he's off the track. Compared to the previous record, the two are essentially tied at this point, but this run's ending was very solid and was enough to set a new record. Dasher is the king of Rainbow Road and has been for over 13 years, and he once again reminded everyone these past few months. As for the future of these records, both can still be lowered, but a full second sub doesn't seem likely for a while. Great job on your improvements and good luck with your karting ventures in 2022. Next up, we have Peach Circuit PRB, where Taiga claimed both records in September. Taiga struck first in the flap with a 6 millisecond improvement and a time of 16.643. There isn't much to be said about this run, but we'll do a quick run through. This is a lap 2 fast lap, which of course means that one lap of PLS PRB must be driven before every attempt. Taiga starts to the right of the line in such a way that he is able to drive cleanly inside the trees without going wide. Unfortunately, we can't really see that because Lakitu gets in the way. From here, it's your quintessential Peach Circuit PRB lines, staying tight and direct while powering through the track. After driving inside the tree, Taiga strings together 4 consecutive LMTs around the turn and inside another tree. Returning to the track, we immediately leave it again, with 2 more RMTs around the corner. From here, it's just straightening the cart and using the Shroom. Taiga drives nicely here and edges out the record by less than a frame. Time for the 3-lap. Taiga slipped 49 milliseconds off the record, driving a 50.766 9 days later. The run starts off with a bang, as Taiga lands a precise tree clip right on the first turn. I talked about this more in my June episode, but what's going on here is that colliding with this tree in a certain way allows the cart to turn sharply in a very short time period. This is advantageous as it allows Taiga to drive a much tighter line on the first straight, a line that would be otherwise impossible to perform without a significant change in angle from the tree. From here, we see driving very similar to that of the flap. Everything is as expected until the end of the lap where Taiga does a 3rd RMT on the final turn, coming back to the road briefly before leaving it once again with another string of LMTs. The way he enters lap 2 is identical to his flap, and would you believe it? So is the driving for most of the lap. Taiga actually loses 45 milliseconds to Dasher in this lap due to slightly less optimal lines. Behind by 30 milliseconds into lap 3, Taiga needs a stellar performance to clutch out a new record. Luckily, that is exactly what Taiga is good at doing. He drives excellently, his MTs are fast, his corners are tight, and his Shroom is very nice. 16.699, the best lap 3 in a world record run. So where do we go from here? Well, the sum of best splits is a clean 50.500, which suggests that there is still much time to save. A majority of the possible time save can be attributed to an absolute monster of a lap 1 that Dasher drove back in June, clocking in at 17.033. The lap 1 in this run was 17.151, which is significantly slower. The only problem I see is trying to keep yourself together after driving such a freak of an opener. However, Taiga has a healthy supply of clutch juice on hand and could definitely close out an insane run if the opportunity presents itself. Regardless, Big props to Taiga for getting 2 more solid records, and good luck if you choose to push further here. At the end of September, Taiga came back to Yoshi Circuit once again to set a new record of 27.339 on the fast lap. This beat world record by just 7 milliseconds, but is also a considerable improvement over the last record with video, which was Beta's 27.399 set last year. This run was really nice, but there really isn't much to say about it if I'm being honest. If you want to know more about the strats on Yoshi Circuit, please check out my August 2021 video where I cover the 3-lap time. 8 records down, 8 to go. Everyone hanging in there okay? Well, make sure you're seated because these next 2 records are truly remarkable. On September 17th, Taiga sent shockwaves through the MKDS community when he set a time of 1:36.742 on Shroom Ridge, slashing over 400 milliseconds off Dasher's record. While a 1:36 was definitely possible, no one really expected anyone to go for it, especially so soon. If you're not familiar with the former world record and what allowed Taiga to improve so much, let me review real quick. In 2008, Dasher used PRB to drive across this big patch of grass on lap 1 and saved a bunch of time. This record was pretty good. How good, you ask? Well, it stood for around 11 years, nearly being beaten by Rupa in 2012, before Max beat it in 2020 without the use of PRB. So what did Dasher do? Well, 1 week later, he came back and crushed his former record with the same strat, and then came back the next week, held PRB into lap 2, and slapped another 0.4 off the record like it was nothing. Okay, so now Taiga enters the picture, and what did he do to crush the record? Did he PRB into lap 3? Well, no, but we're gonna get to that in a sec. Taiga kept PRB until lap 2 just like Dasher, and they were about even, but then Taiga just took off in the tunnel, widening his lead en route to a best split. Entering lap 3, he's 202 milliseconds ahead and he just won't stop. He widened the lead by taking each turn even tighter and reducing mistakes. Dasher actually lost a bit of speed exiting his shroom and had some difficulty making it up the slope into the tunnel. Both karters managed to hop inside the yellow car and clutch their runs, but Taiga just crushed it on lap 3, nabbing another best split with a 32.325 closer. So where do we go from here? Most signs point to using PRB to cut across the grass on lap 3, which of course requires keeping it until then. Both Dasher and Taiga lost PRB soon after exiting the grass on lap 2, but they also weren't planning on keeping it much past that anyways. Keeping PRB into lap 3 would make your lap 2 split a bit slower because you need to take things a bit safer, but the benefits of a third grass cut would outweigh it. As for who's gonna do it and the time they may achieve, well, we'll have to wait and see. Both Dasher and Taiga are capable, but I don't see either of them pushing this category any further than it has already. But if they did, we would see the record creep into low 136 territory, something I'm sure no one could have imagined just a few years ago. But regardless, congrats to Taiga on setting an unbelievable time here, and best of luck going forward. Next is a record few of us saw coming. On October 8th, Taiga dropped a 45.988 on Yoshi Falls, edging out Dasher's 3.5-year-old record by 6 milliseconds. Let's take a closer look. Taiga's big improvement over Dasher was executing the faster bridge strat by beginning his mini turbo before transitioning from the slope to the main road. This strategy is seen in the flap record that I covered in the August episode. When executed very well and with absurdly fast mini turbos, it saves time over taking the alternate line, which goes wide for the boost panel. Emphasis on when executed well, however. On lap 1, Taiga manages to fit in all the required MTs before the second waterfall, but doesn't really get a nice big jump over the water that you'd usually get with the boost panel. Regardless, Taiga capitalizes on some shaky driving from Dasher to enter lap 2 with a 56 millisecond lead. But it's not that simple. The last straight before the finish line is a bit funky. Without the luxury of a starting boost, the puzzle on Yoshi Falls entering laps 2 and 3 is how to enter the lap as tightly and as quickly as possible. Taking a look at both Taiga and Dasher's approach to this, we can see that they're quite different. Taiga opts to do a quick double hop while Dasher goes a bit wider to squeeze in an additional MT, snaking through the straight. I'll go out and just state it now. Dasher's lap transition is quite a bit faster, but let me explain why. Visually, Taiga appears to be driving less distance, but he's not spending that entire time at max speed, losing his boost for a massive 22 frames in this case. Additionally, Taiga releases his first MT of the lap much earlier than Dasher, which forces him to spend time steering around the fence before entering the slope where he can charge another MT. Meanwhile, Dasher can charge his mini turbo much sooner, losing his boost for far fewer frames. Lap 2. Taiga goes crazy and does the flap strat again. He executes the strategy pretty well, but unfortunately his lap 2 is going up against the second best lap 2 ever driven on the track. That combined with a poor lap transition loses 63 milliseconds to the former record, putting him 7 milliseconds back entering lap 3. Lap 3 is quite different from the previous two. It's basically a fast lap attempt, but with the added pressure of having 2 clean laps of Yoshi Falls behind you. Now here's the thing, Dasher is kinda good at Yoshi Falls fast lap. Like really good. Taiga definitely isn't bad, but let's remember who's PRB God here and who's 7 milliseconds behind trying to squeeze out a record. Taiga's poor lap transition strat doesn't put the odds in his favor, but Dasher does opt to go wide for the booster on lap 3, and his ending wasn't exactly sub 15 level, so there's a shot. Taiga goes for broke lap 3, gets a nice shroom, does the riskier strat a third time, and has a tighter ending than Dasher to edge him out by less than a frame. Now it sounds like I've been kinda mean to Taiga throughout this analysis, but that's only because he wasn't using the best lap transition available to him. Also, the production of this episode took long enough for Dasher to come back and smash the record using his superior strats and the godly Wario BLS combination. I'll be sure to cover that time in more detail in a future episode though. Despite that, I'll extend a courteous GG to Taiga for edging out a record that few thought would fall anytime soon. If there's been a theme the past 4 months, it has certainly not been rivalry. Every single track I've covered so far has had one player improving their own time with no one else in the picture. But for our final track this episode, we have a challenger who would stand up to Taiga. Let's begin. Shroom Ridge would be the site of our final battle, and the first strike would come from Taiga with a 10 millisecond cut to Max's nearly year-old world record with a time of 109.173. Now if you've seen the comparison of these two records or even looked at the splits, you can tell that something strange is going on here. Entering lap 3, Max has off-screen Taiga with a 138 millisecond lead. So what's going on here? What is Taiga doing to lose so much time? And what is Taiga doing to gain so much time? Before we get into that, let's take a look at the essentials for world record level gameplay here. Thanks to the awkward starting position, the first MT of the run is delayed until after a quick steer to the left to readjust the cart. After the 2 MTs, top runners somehow squeeze in this absolutely bonkers RMT inside the bus before continuing on a tight line which keeps them close to the fence. This big right turn before the tunnel takes some methodical MTs to take the corner tight, but not too crazy as to completely screw over your line going forward. The tunnel is once again a process of staying as close to the wall as possible and boosting constantly. This fence isn't as nicely curved as the other one though, so it's very easy to clip a corner if you're not careful. Exiting the tunnel, you want to stay inside the bus. It's a narrow gap and it gets even tighter on lap 2, but it's quite a bit faster so we make it work. Now comes the world famous Shroom Bridge, the namesake of the track. Much the same as its double dash counterpart, it's time to blast MTs left and right and thrust forward in the name of the BLS. But here's where Taiga differs from the competition. In direct violation of Henry Smith Snake's 1897 edict on snaking, Taiga goes a bit wider and uses the prestigious mini turbo technique twice in the same direction, then continues down the bridge. As he does this, the margin between him and Max grows tremendously. But there is a method to this madness. By performing mini turbos in this order, Taiga is closer to the left side of the track and is facing the opposite direction. While Max is forced to drive around this truck, Taiga can go inside it, gaining back a good portion of the time that he lost earlier. Even with this tighter line, Taiga is quite a distance behind Max, who is not letting up, widening the gap between them throughout lap 2. Once again, Taiga opts to use his new strategy on the bridge, allowing him to drive inside this yellow car entering the third lap. Max is still miles ahead of Taiga in the first tunnel, but Taiga is about to shake things up. On lap 3, it is common practice at world record level to use your shroom to navigate the intended shortcut off to the right to save a bit of time over driving the normal way. It should be noted that a lot of things need to go right in order for this shortcut to actually save time. Before entering the sand, runners hit the shroom and start a slide which carries them close to the left wall. As your boost is expiring, you want to redirect your momentum towards the track and charge a quick mini turbo before jumping off the ledge. As you land, it is imperative that you hold left and R to start a slide and charge a quick MT. Failure to pull this off will result in wide bounces, wall hits, and dead runs. Max's massive lead out of the tunnel means that his approach to the shortcut is being largely impeded by this bus. To compensate for this, Max throws his line wide to avoid crashing directly into it. By the time Taiga is presented with this choice, the bus has moved a bit, and this allows him to drive a much more direct line towards the shortcut. Suddenly, Taiga's back in the action as both karters ascend the hill. Redirecting their lines back towards the track, it's become clear that Taiga has a more direct path and is rapidly closing the gap between them. But don't count Max out yet. Exiting the final tunnel, he's still holding on to a small lead. It's going to be a dead heat to the finish. Finger speed will be put to the test in this final stretch. Snaking in unison across the bridge, Max's lead is slipping. Halfway across and Max is barely holding on. He's moving right while Taiga's drifting left. By the 9th stripe, it's anybody's game. By the 11th, Max has regained position. It's going to come down to the final MT. But Max can't keep it tight, and Taiga takes it by a frame. A truly spectacular showing from these two karters, with the young Japanese phenom edging out the American champion with a fantastic final lap. But the excitement doesn't end yet. Nearly 3 months would pass, but Max returned with a record of his own, 109.150. Using his own strategy, Max drives a stellar lap 1 with an excellent lap 2. Entering lap 3, he has a lead so large that Taiga could not surmount it. Could not surmount it for 2 days. December 30th, Taiga posted a 109.103. He refined his bridge strategy and cleaned up his driving on the first 2 laps, finding himself only 107 milliseconds behind Max into lap 3. Taiga has made up a bigger margin on this track before and was prepared to do it again. Taiga would drive his final split 154 milliseconds faster than Max, reclaiming the record. Closing out 2021, there was serious conversation into the possibility of a 108 on Mushroom Bridge. Many still doubted the legitimacy of Taiga's bridge strategy, saying that the lap 1 split was just too slow. But Taiga was going to prove to us that he could not only get the 108, but he was going to do it his way. Enter 2022. And while this video was supposed to stop at midnight on the 31st, Taiga was still writing more chapters to 2021. January 2nd, Taiga drops a 109.096. His lap 1s are still terribly slow, but he achieved another best split on lap 3. But come on, there's still 97 milliseconds to go. No way he's going to jump straight to a 108 from here, right? It's January 3rd, 2022. Taiga posted a new video. .985. Incredible execution, tight lines, and just about the most insane shroom ever seen. He fears no bus, no fences, and no cars. Taiga proved everyone wrong and slayed the sub. Good stuff, mate. And that's it. 16 records were set in the final quarter of this year, 14 of which were actually set in the year of 2021. While it certainly wasn't as chock full of records as the previous 8 months, some quality times were set during these past few months. We finished the year with a world record total of 144, which is the most in 1 year since 2014 and the second most since 2008. The MKDS renaissance is still in full swing, with exciting records coming from Dasher and Taiga and over 140 new and returning players submitting times across 2021. I look forward to bringing all of you more videos like this in the coming year and sharing the stories that make MKDS such a special game. And with that, my name is Puddings. Stay classy, Carters, and may the MTs be with you.